We focus on this story that's about the mining group AngloGold Ashanti that has announced it's going to cut 2,000 jobs as part of a restructuring plan. The company says this will affect employees across different categories and levels. Meanwhile, the National Union of Mineworkers, the NUM, says it plans to engage with the mine owners to prevent retrenchments. Well, to explain to us what's behind these job cuts, we are joined on the line this morning by Stewart Bailey from AngloGold Ashanti. He is the Senior Vice President for Investor Relations at the company. Mr. Bailey, good morning, and thank you very much for your time. Thanks for talking to us on our morning program. Just overall, just at a high level, why are you going to be cutting these 2,000 jobs?
Morning, Dan. As you may know, our South African mining business, which has consisted principally of very ultra-deep mining operations out on the West Rand and in the Northwest, have been taking heavy losses for some time right now. We took the very difficult decision, particularly given the state of the economy, to say that we need to safeguard the long-term future of our existing operations, which are producing at roughly half the level they were a year ago. And so we've taken that step in order to ensure their long-term viability. We've needed to embark on this restructuring conversation with our colleagues and their organized labor representatives to get the cost structures right so that we've got the wherewithal to invest into the future.
Now, I'm just trying to think now, you say you've got these deep mines and you are restructuring them. Are you shutting them down, those deep mines, or are you going to use mechanization?
No, neither of those things right at the moment, Dan. We actually sold some operations and we shut one operation down last year, and that's the principal reason why our production is halved. No. What that means is that our very vast surface infrastructure is still adequate to support a production level of twice our current production level. And that's where most of that restructuring will come place, which is off-mine services and infrastructure that was built to support a much bigger production base. I must also stress that this restructuring starts at the very top and will go through the organization, as you mentioned, but it will start from the regional executive committee and go all the way down.
I'm just trying to understand. I mean, are these mines that you've sold some of the mines, and maybe the new owners then wanted to restructure their resources and stuff like that? But why? I'm just trying to. Why is production down if you've got the mines and you can still mine them? Why, for instance, as you said, shut some of them down and cut your labor back?
So where we're at now is if you assume that you sell an ounce of gold for about $1,280 an ounce, we are producing that gold at close to $1,400 an ounce, which means that for every ounce we produce, we lose more than $100. Out of our existing operations, which is a big surface operation and one ultra-deep operation out in the West Wits near Merafong, we won't be shutting those operations down. We'll be continuing those into the future and actually hopefully investing into ensuring that they're very long-term operations. Now, in order to do that, we need to make sure that those businesses are capable to earn a return that we can then invest back into those mines. And that's really what this is all about. So as much as it's a painful discussion around restructuring, it is around ensuring that we have the financial capability to invest into those operations for the future.
What's driving the cost of gold mining? $1,400 to produce an ounce of $1,400 an ounce for producing an ounce of gold, and $1,280 is the price. Is it because of the price?
No, the price is something that's totally out of our control, the gold price. That's really set on an international level. So it means that the only real flexibility we have is to ensure that is on our cost side. Now, what drives the cost of production is, first of all, electricity. That's roughly 25% of our input cost. Labor is another 50% of our input cost. So those two things together are 75%. And then the balance would be things like explosives and steel and reagents and that type of thing. So, really as I mentioned, the flexibility on our side is really ensuring that we can make an acceptable margin to ensure that we can reinvest in the long term and have the best possible chance of preserving the remaining jobs that are left.
What's your total workforce currently, Mr. Bailey?
Roughly 8,200.
That's your total?
That's correct.
I mean, you used to employ, AngloGold used to be a dominant player in this field, in gold mining in South Africa. Besides your output, you used to employ tens of thousands of people. Is this the last, the shedding of the 2,000 jobs, is this the last? Because the number now, 8,000, is like very small.
That's right. We did at one point employ far more people in South Africa. We would, given the information that we have at the moment, given our mine plans, we would hope that this is sufficient to ensure that we have that capability to generate the return I mentioned to you for the long term. But as I mentioned before, that we have no control over the price. So we do hope that the price remains stable and hopefully increases into the future. And that provides us some stability on the employment front.
Now, that means after this, I guess, from 8,000 less 2,000, going to be 6,000. That's a radically reduced exposure as well you have in South Africa in terms of those numbers, because you can't be mining a lot of mines. Am I wrong in saying that?
Not at all. That will leave us with roughly 500,000 ounces that we produce out of South Africa. And that is from our Mponeng mine up near Merafong, which is the world's deepest mine. Yes. At almost 4 kilometers underground. And then we have our surface operations, which are in the northwest, closer to Orkney.
Where else is AngloGold investing? Why are you leaving South Africa? It seems to me like you are really cutting back drastically, that maybe in the near future we might not have AngloGold in South Africa. Where else are you finding opportunities elsewhere, and that maybe you could impart to the Minister of Mineral Resources, Gwede Mantashe, one day and tell him, if you guys did this as a government, if you enable this kind of environment, we would grow here, because it's like you're really leaving us. You are leaving our shores.
So the first thing is we're certainly not leaving our shores. Our mines in South Africa, or the gold mines in South Africa, are very old. You must remember they are more than 100 years old. These are not renewable resources, and the gold industry in the country has shrunk dramatically over the last 10 years as we've depleted a lot of resources in South Africa. And that's just an inevitability about gold mining, that these mines, almost from the day you start operating them, they draw a day closer to closure. So that inevitability is happening in gold. Most of the gold resource that is safely mineable has been mined. And we, as you mentioned, we do have gold production outside of South Africa. We are the biggest gold producer on the African continent. We are in Tanzania, we are in Guinea, we are in Ghana, we are in Mali, we are in the DRC, and then we have smaller operations then in Brazil, Argentina, and in Australia. We have a very close engagement with the government through the Chamber of Mines and unilaterally, in which we do share ideas very freely with Minister Mantashe around what would make a more vibrant sector generally for mining. But you must remember that for gold, we have seen the best days for the gold industry, and it really is about ensuring that the gold mines that are left are able to operate for as long, as safely and as profitably as possible.
Mr. Bailey, very briefly, I'm in trouble now with my producer Bhavna here because of the time I've taken in this interview, but I need to ask you, I remember in the past when mining companies were cutting jobs, the unions would ask you to enable those workers who are going to be offloaded, so to speak, to be able to eke out a living, earn a living after that. Is AngloGold going to be helping some of those 2,000 workers to be able to earn a living elsewhere after you've retrenched them?
Most certainly, and part of the discussion process that we'll have with the unions going forward is, first of all, to find out what we can do to reduce that number in the most practical way possible. And then another part of that process, once we've agreed, is to ensure that there is what we call portable skills training, so that people are equipped with the wherewithal and the skills in order to enter another sector potentially.
Thank you very much for your time. That's Stewart Bailey from AngloGold Ashanti.